So the guy we're going to start with today lived in what would be the New York City or London or Paris of his day. Probably the first metropolitan city that ever existed in the world. And he was a shepherd. So he was providing meat and wool and animals for sacrifice. He grew very wealthy. He wasn't in the middle of the city, but he was in the outskirts where the shepherds would be. It was a city called Ur on the Euphrates, right at the mouth of the Euphrates River, where it emptied into the Persian Gulf. Some people say 65, 100,000 people lived there, and it was the biggest city of its time on earth. So this would have been his frame of reference, that I'm a big city guy, I'm part of the most spectacular city on earth, like everybody in the world envies us and living here, and it's the most amazing place. So he would have thought of himself as somebody. And God came to him, and it's interesting when you read different accounts of it, and there are several of them in the Bible. In some of them it talks about he came to his father, and then later to him. But he told them as a family to begin to leave everything they knew. They were worshiping the moon god in their city. And Joshua says they were worshiping idols when God came to them. And he reveals himself somehow to this man and his family and says, I want you to leave here and I want you to go to a land that I will show you, that I'm going to give to you. And so they begin a journey and they get halfway to the end of the journey, and then his dad says, let's just stay here for a while. And so they wait until his father dies, and then God reappears and recalls this man, this shepherd who's been now on his journey partway home to the new place he's going to be, and calls him again and says, continue the journey, go all the way to the place I told you to go. So he goes on this long journey in this ark, because you couldn't go this way. It was a big desert. You had to go this way. So he goes from Ur to Haran, and then God says, I want you to keep going on your journey all the way to Canaan. Take your flocks and your people. Take everyone and keep going on the journey. So they get there. He spends the rest of his life in this area. He never owns anything except a little cave he bought when his wife died for a little place to bury her. He has a child there. He gets to see some of the fulfillment of things that are going to happen in the future, but God also tells him his people are going to be taken to a foreign land. They're going to be in slavery. He's going to bring them back here to own this land. So this grand story that he senses he's supposed to be a part of. And some of you know who this is by now, and his name is Abraham. So Abraham was a shepherd. There are a lot of shepherds in the Bible. I listed some of them for you. Abel. So, he got killed by his brother. So that was the farmer and the rancher fighting each other. The rancher got killed by the farmer. Abel. Job was a shepherd. Abraham, who we just talked about, his son Isaac. Isaac's son Jacob. All 12 of Jacob's sons. Moses. David. Amos, the prophet. So we've talked recently about three people in the Old Testament, the first covenant that God made with his people. Three people that are so pivotal to understanding who Jesus is and the mission that he comes to fulfill that started 2,000 years before with Abraham. So the three people that we've talked about are Abraham, Moses, and David. So critical to understand. And guess what they all did in common? Shepherds. They were all shepherds. And God often in the Old Testament describes himself as a shepherd, and he describes his people as sheep. Now, when you lived in the ancient world, you understood it wasn't always the greatest compliment to be called sheep. Sheep the way that we've domesticated them, they're kind of helpless and dumb creatures. They need a shepherd to keep them alive. They don't have good defenses for protecting themselves from predators. They don't always know where to go to get food and water once they're domesticated. They need a shepherd to provide for them. And so when God says he's a shepherd and we're his sheep, he's saying you're dependent, you need me, you're helpless, you struggle, and I'm the one who's going to provide for you. I'm the one that's going to take care of you. I'm the one who's going to watch over you. And we will have this relationship where I have chosen to take care of you, and you have the opportunity to be taken care of by me. And we have this relationship with one another. So Jesus, at this point, we've been going through the series on I Am, going back to Exodus 3, when God reveals his name to Moses and says, his name is Yahweh, I am who I am, I will be who I will be, I was who I was, I am the eternal self-existent one, the eternal now, I'm the always present one. And Jesus in John's gospel, the way John structures it, he structures it around different signs, and then he also structures it around these opportunities where Jesus describes himself as I am, and then something comes after it. So today we're going to look at two things that Jesus says about himself in this passage in John 10. And if you want to, we'll have the verses on the screen, but you can also open up a paper Bible or digital Bible. John 10. And he's going to describe himself with two metaphors. So if it's been a while since high school English, a metaphor is a picture where you take something that exists in the world and you compare it to something else. If it's a simile, you say like, it's like or as this. If it's a metaphor, you just say this thing is this person, for example. So when Jesus says, I am the gate, I am the shepherd, he's using a metaphor, a picture. So he knows the world of the people he's speaking to. They know what shepherds are. We're going to talk about some of the difference between a shepherd then and a shepherd now. So he's going to use these two metaphors to describe himself to the people, and especially the religious leaders. So he says this in John 10. I tell you the truth, anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. So in Jesus' day, they would make a sheepfold. Sheep, the domesticated ones, aren't big-time jumpers. They're like Rocky Mountain sheep. So you just had a low wall. Sometimes you'd make it out of sticks, sometimes stones if it was permanent and it stayed in one place forever. So a low wall like this. And so he's saying, you know, when someone goes over that wall and then throws sheep over the edge, you know, we had cattle rustling here. They had sheep rustling back in the day. So he's saying, if anyone doesn't come through the gate, they're thieves and robbers. But the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him. So there would be a person assigned, like in a village, all the sheep would be in one area. Everyone, all the shepherds put all their sheep in the same sheepfold. And then they would take turns, who's going to be the gatekeeper. And so when you brought your sheep to the fold at night, then the gatekeeper would let you in. And he's saying, you know, a shepherd brings his sheep to the gatekeeper and goes in through the gate. That's what shepherds do. So the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. Now, when I first got here in January, we started off with this series where we talked a lot about this. Anybody remember what the psalm was? Very familiar one? Psalm 23. So we talked a lot about shepherding in the ancient world and how it's different. So when we think of sheep, unless we're from like the Middle East, we don't think about it right. Most of us don't know about sheep that much. I mean, when I was going on walks here in the spring, there were the goats of Woodland. I don't know who that dude is, but he has a gigantic flock, and it's over by my house in the fields west of Spring Lake. And so he rents out his goats and he brings the whole herd. He puts up this electric fence and they just mow down all the grass and weeds. So I guess you can rent like a couple hundred goats. And then there's big old sheepdogs that guard these goats. I guess they'd be goat dogs. Big old goat dogs. Big, scary, white Great Pyrenees, I think it was what they are. And the first time I'm walking my little French bulldog in the field next to those things, when they came running up to me, I went, okay. I am definitely scared I'm not going over to do anything to those sheep, those goats. But in the way we often think about, if I were to ask you to describe a shepherd, what's the things that characterize what a shepherd does? In the way that we think of it, we often think about sheepdogs. So a shepherd is the one who learns how to whistle, and then the sheepdogs do all the things that he whistles about, and the sheepdogs, corral and shepherd the sheep, keep them in line, get the stray ones. They herd them into a little pack, and then they lead them wherever they're supposed to go by driving them with fear. That's how we think about shepherding, is dogs that the sheep are scared of, herding them and directing them wherever the shepherd tells them to go. Shepherd still has good intentions. He's taking care of the sheep, but he's using dogs and their fear of dogs to get the sheep to do what they're supposed to do. This is not at all the image of Middle Eastern shepherding. It's like the opposite. There is no fear that the shepherd is using when he's shepherding his flock in the ancient Near East, in what we call the Middle East now. What shepherds did, instead of being behind their flock and using dogs to drive their sheep to a certain place, the shepherd would be in front of the flock and the sheep would be behind him. And the shepherd would lead the flock and would call to the sheep, and the sheep would come. And they didn't have hundreds of sheep because they were poor. They had, I don't know how many sheep, but they had enough where they knew each sheep by name. They gave them all names. Maybe based on their appearance, maybe based on their personality, who knows, all the reasons. They had names for each sheep. So if you asked a shepherd, tell me all the sheep in your flock, they would know how many there were, and they would know them by name. And the sheep learned to follow the shepherd's voice. They knew their name because there was reward connected to coming when the shepherd called them, food or water, attention. So the shepherd would lead his sheep in front, and the sheep would follow because they knew that the shepherd loved them, would take care of them, was taking them to good places to eat and drink. Very important to understand, totally different kind of shepherding than probably anything you have ever seen, definitely than I have ever seen. So he calls his sheep by name, and he leads them out. After he has gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger. They will run from him because they don't know his voice. It's a wonderful picture of God's relationship with us, individually and as a collective, that he knows in the sharing time when we have that. I hope that if you're not the sort of person that speaks out in the sharing time, which some of us are and some of us aren't, it's not a judgment if you do or don't. But we all come here with needs. We all come here with vulnerabilities, with struggles, with heartaches, with joys, with triumphs. Some of us get venues and rings, and some of us get surgeries. Every week's different, every week's different for us. But sometimes we come here on a high, sometimes we come here on a low, but we all come here with just this reality of who we are. And I hope that whether you ever speak out loud in the sharing group in front of the group, sharing time in front of the group, that you use that time, this is what I do, use that time to bring to the Lord what it is that's going on in your life. How it is that you need to just make yourself aware of your need for the Lord and what's going on with you. I have this time up here so I can share things when I want to. I don't need to use that time. But some of you, maybe there's a time for you to share, to be more vulnerable with the group. And if that's how God leads you, great. But always we should use this as a time to say, Lord, I just want to make myself present and aware to you. Like you already know me, but I need to know you know me in your presence. Like it's for me that I want to be known and loved. And so we make ourselves present to God and say, this is what I need, God. This is who I am. This is what's going on in me. Jesus says that he speaks. He speaks, and the sheep know his voice. He speaks to you. So how do you listen to the voice of Jesus? And what has Jesus been saying to you? So what are some of the ways that Jesus has spoken to you in your experience? Anyone? How has he spoken to you? Through his word. Definitely. One of the reasons we read the word of God is because although it wasn't written to us originally, it was written for us. So as we often say here, put one foot in our story and then one foot in the story of the Bible, we watch and observe and listen and hear how God was at work in other people's lives. And when our life encounters that experience, we put ourselves in that place and ask, how is God doing similar things in my life? What is he saying to me? So when we open up the word, it's not just to learn things that happened a long time ago. It's to have a fresh encounter with God and listen, what are you saying to my heart through this? So the word of God. Yes. Go ahead. You shared it a second ago. What? Yeah. Dreams, sometimes God speaks to us. A lot of times in the Bible, there's stories of God speaking to us through dreams. So that can be. What else? How else has God spoken to you? Through worship. As we're encountering these words of describing who God is and what he's doing in our lives, he can speak to us in a fresh way, just remind us of something. Sometimes I'm singing a worship song and I am not at all in my heart agreeing with what I'm singing. And I'm saying, I am definitely not there right now. This song is making me where I'm definitely not there. And so sometimes like, wow, just thank you for making me aware that I don't see you that way right now. I need to have you work in my heart in a fresh way. Wow, I didn't know until I was singing that I don't think is true, that I need that. Or, wow, that speaks to my heart. That totally expresses where I'm at. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for giving me like someone else's words to use to bring worship to you. Sometimes just being quiet and listening to God's people worshiping and just bathing in an environment of worship. So worship can do that. So one of the things that in my other lives that I have besides being the interim or transitional pastor here, one of the things I have the privilege of doing is coaching leaders, and most of the leaders that I coach are pastors or ministry leaders, chaplains, different kinds, therapists, different kinds of ministry leaders that I know. And so I was in a group this week, and it was my turn to share something going on in my life, and then we practice this model where we take different roles. So one person listens for facts, one person listens for feelings, one person listens for values, and one person listens for tensions. So when someone's sharing their story, you take turns in these roles listening for those dimensions of what the person's sharing. And then we have a conversation afterwards and ask questions and give feedback about what we heard when the person shared. So when it's your turn to share, you're choosing something that you want feedback or encouragement or support, or you're confused or you're excited or whatever it is. So I shared what God led me to share about, and it was interesting. One of the people said afterwards, we give feedback to each other about what did God do in me at the end of the time? What did God do in me by listening to your story and then giving you feedback on what I heard? And one of the people who hasn't shared very much, kind of closed. Some people like super open right away. Other people more closed. They take time to open up. And he said, when you shared your story, I felt like I could breathe more easily. because I know it's okay to have struggles. And he hasn't shared with us what his struggles are yet. But hearing someone else share their struggles relaxed him. And he felt like, I can breathe when I hear someone else share. And I know it's okay not to have it all together. And actually, him sharing that became my way that I most heard Jesus during that time. Just the fresh reminder that it's our common humanity, our struggles, our share times. It's those things that connect us to each other when we get real about what's going on in our lives. So that became my way I heard Jesus. When he said that, I heard that little whisper that you learn to listen for as you're going through life. This is what I have for you, Mark. Like how you're hearing from me to know that I'm in your life tonight is that when you share your story and when you listen to other people's stories and you're there for each other without judgment, that's where breathing easier happens. So thank you for that, Lord. Thank you. So that was a way that Jesus spoke to me. It was just in a conversation. Sometimes for me it'll happen, I'll be watching a TV show and something that a writer has scripted a character to say in a TV show, I'll be like, oh, that was for me just now. That was for me just now. I'll read a Facebook post about something that someone posts. I sent one to my wife this morning. I'm reading this Facebook post and I'm like, oh, this helps me understand my wife. I sent it to her. And she's like, yep, that's who I am. So sometimes God speaks through other people's experiences, and we see things in fresh ways when we encounter other people's realities. But he's speaking to us. He doesn't just speak to us in the Bible. He speaks all kinds of different ways in our lives. So one of the things we have the privileges of doing is every day waking up and saying, Jesus, how are you going to speak to me today? And so we think, oh, it's Sunday. It's going to happen in the sermon. Might not happen in the sermon. Might happen in the greeting time in the lobby. Might happen in the worship time. Might happen in the sharing time. Might happen in the cafe after church. Might not be the sermon at all. So, but we have an opportunity to be with God's people in an intentional way, and we have an opportunity to hear, like, okay, are you going to speak to me in any of those ways? Is there going to be something later? But it would be great to be thinking as you get up each day, like, what's one thing you're going to say to me today that is supposed to be my takeaway for the day? What's one thing you're going to say to me? And to go, life can be an adventure. Like we're going on an adventure just looking to see where God is leading us. Where is Jesus speaking in a fresh way in my life today? So it's like a Jesus hunt every day. Like, Jesus, where are you leading me? How are you speaking? I'm your sheep. I'm trying to listen. Like, where are you leading? What are you going to speak to me today? He speaks to us. Jesus knows you. How does it affect you to reflect that Jesus knows your name? He knows you by name. You're not just part of some random flock being driven by dogs in fear. You're following a shepherd. You're behind him. And he calls you by name. Thomas, Aaron, Griselda, Nancy, Bryson, all of your names. He calls you by name. And he says, follow me. We're going on an adventure today. And we're going to go to new places. I'm going to lead you to drinking water, and I'm going to lead you to fresh pastures. I'm going to let you lie down in the shade. We're going to go on an adventure today. He knows you. How does it affect you to know that Jesus knows your name? It's that personal. What is he saying to you today? And just the realization that he knows you that personally is one of the most amazing things to me. The next thing you see clearly in this introductory part of this chapter is that he leads you. How have you experienced Jesus leading you in your life? So he's leading you individually. If you're married, he's leading you as a couple. If you're in a part of a family with children and grandchildren, he's leading you as a family. He's leading you in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your school. He's leading you. He's leading you in a church. This church is on an adventure. Where are we going? Where is God taking us? What does the future look like? So he's leading you somewhere. And so one of the things that's hard for me is I like to know in advance where he's leading us. Like, I like to know what the future is. And he's like, I just call you by name, and you just follow me. You'll see. You'll see. I like to know, like, but where are you leading us before I sign up for this? Where are you leading me? What's going to happen next? And sometimes we know, but sometimes we don't know. We have no idea. We're one day at a time people. Big thing in recovery, if you have a recovery background. One day at a time. One day at a time. And it's like that in our relationship with God. It's one day at a time. Where are you leading me today? What am I doing today? How are you guiding me today? And of course, we're supposed to dream and think about the future and plan, but we also are supposed to hold all those plans with open hands like we don't know. We're not the shepherd. We're just sheep. We don't know the future. So where are you leading us? Where are you guiding us? Where are we headed? Which calls out for us to trust and not control. We like control, and God is constantly teaching us trust. To give up control, to let trust come in. Those who heard Jesus use this illustration didn't understand what he meant. So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. One of the things that in some sheepfolds there would be like an actual wooden gate that would demarcate, it'd be this big stone wall, and then there'd be a wooden gate in the middle of that created an entrance, and then the sheep would go in and out of that gate. There'd be one gate. One of the things that was interesting in the Middle East was oftentimes the gate was one of the shepherds. There was no wood gate. So at night, they would take turns being the gate. So one of the shepherds would sleep in the gate. So the sheep would know, like, oh, who's protecting us from anyone entering into the sheepfold is my shepherd. He's lying in the gate. He's in charge of watching over me tonight. I can rest. I don't just have wood protecting me. I have a person that I know who knows me, protecting me, watching over me. If anyone comes to try to attack me tonight, they have to go through him. So when Jesus says he's the gate, he's saying he's the entryway into your life. And he's watching over you when you're asleep, when you're awake. I was talking to a pastor recently who was going on a sabbatical. And then we met a couple times during the sabbatical, and then we've met once since. And one of the things he shared with me was when I disengage from my work as a pastor and go in an intentional time of just being detached and on vacation. And in this case, he's going to have a longer time sabbatical just to reflect. He said, one of the things that happens is I have terrible nightmares. And I don't want that to happen. And so I got to ask, why do you not want that to happen? Well, I don't like having nightmares. Well, I know, but what do you think God might be revealing to you about what your everyday life is like that you suppress with work and busyness? And then when you don't have those covering it up, the things that come up in your dreams, what if God's using your dreams to bring healing into your life? To make you aware that there's unresolved issues that he's actually working on while you're asleep. Like neurologically, your brain uses dreams to cleanse itself and get healing at night. And sometimes we're so we've got our lives so tamped down and controlled, the things, we don't even become aware of the trauma we're going through and the stress we're covering up. And then we get away and we have dreams we don't normally have, and scary things come up, and when we have quiet time. Some of us are afraid to be alone and quiet because the things that bubble up inside of us, like we become aware of our angers and our jealousies and our worries and our lusts and all the things inside of us that we try to push down. And sometimes it's being quiet that makes us aware of who we really are. And it's a gift actually to know who you really are, because then when you know Jesus is leading you and he's looking back at you and calling you by name, he already knows that about you. He's not saying, boy, if these people get their lives together, then I would love them and call them and lead them. No. He's saying, I already know they don't have their lives together. I already know they're messed up. And I love them anyway. I'm their shepherd. They're my sheep. I don't need them to be anything different for me to love them and lead them. I am taking them to good places. And it's going to be one day at a time of getting better and closer to me and their ultimate purpose. So it kind of gave, as we unpacked, the time away that he had, it was like this realization of learning to welcome the things that don't feel integrated into his soul. Like going back into work. And it's weird, you'd think someone who's a pastor, like, oh, they're just so close to God. And sometimes we're using our ministry to keep us away from God and ourselves. It's a very interesting thing what we're like as human beings. But for him, it was like a journey into like realizing it's okay to be more unhealed, more broken, more needy, more aware of the things inside of themselves that come up from the past. And to bring those things to Jesus. Say, Jesus, you already know these things about me. Thank you for loving me and leading me when I don't have it all together. So he's the gate, he says. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. A lot of translations say an abundant life, a rich and satisfying life. So we learn through this that Jesus is the way to God and salvation. He's the gate. If we want to get to know God, he says, come through me, I'm the gate. I'm the way into relationship with God. Come through me. Come through me. I'm the entryway. I'm the gate. I will lead you to relationship with my Father. And he says when we do that, when we come through him as the gate, he will give us an abundant life or a rich and satisfying life, the New Living Translation says. Now, in America, when we hear he wants to give me an abundant life, our brains often go to perfectly healthy, more money than I could ever need, a job I find utterly fulfilling, all my relationships are in order and wonderful and everything's great. Like, that's how we think. And it's important to know that, do you think that Jesus thought that he had a rich and abundant life? Do you think Jesus thought that his life was rich and satisfying, abundant? This is one of those times where you can pretend you're an 8-year-old in Sunday school. Do you think that Jesus thought his life was rich and abundant? Yeah. All the time. So yes, he would, if you asked Jesus, do you have a rich and abundant life? What would he say? Yes. But his life was marked by knowing where he was heading, as Aaron said. He was heading to a cross someday. All through his ministry, he was experiencing rejection like he was in these passages, people who were misunderstanding him, people who actually in this passage called him demon-possessed. He's teaching them who God is, and they're like, you got a demon inside of you, bro. We're not listening to you. So it doesn't mean that Jesus' life was always easy, but he would say that he has a rich, abundant, satisfying life. And he wants us to experience his life like he experienced his life with the Father. So when we look to external things to determine whether we have a rich and satisfying life, we're looking in the wrong direction. God may bless us with wonderful things in our life. Our relationships may be wonderfully ordered and peaceful most of the time with most of the people. We may have all the things we need. We may have food and shelter and all the things. That's great. But what he's talking about is more of an interior experience. That as we go through life, through the ups and downs, we learn to listen to his voice when he calls us. We learn that we have a shepherd who cares for us. We learn that he's leading us to places that are satisfying, that our inner world can be different than our exterior world, that our inner world is not dependent on how perfect our exterior world is. We can have conflict in relationships and still have a rich and satisfying inner life with Jesus. We can have struggles financially and still have a rich and satisfying inner life with Jesus. We can have dreams that get unfulfilled and still have a rich, inner, satisfying relationship with Jesus. So the thing that Jesus wants us to know more than anything is that if we use his life as the thing we're looking at, which is what he always tells us to do, his life wasn't always easy, but it was rich and satisfying because he was in constant communion with the Father. And if his life was going great externally, he was in rich and satisfying relationship with the Father. If it was struggle and heartache, exterior-wise, he still had a rich and satisfying relationship with his Father. He was cultivating that every day. And he says, I can teach you to do the same thing. So how can you experience more of the rich and satisfying life that Jesus has for you? So first of all, he says he's the gate. He's the one lying down, protecting us, watching over us. He can lead us to a rich and abundant life. He's also the good shepherd. So he says, I am the good shepherd. Shepherd, just like all those people who were shepherds that I read earlier, all through the Old Testament, God describes himself as a shepherd. And he says, I am Yahweh. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep, as Aaron said. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand turns away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me, just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. I have other sheep too that are not in this sheepfold. I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. Probably predicting that his ministry is going to go beyond his own Jewish people to the Gentiles of the entire world. The Father loves me because I sacrifice my life so I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. And when he stands before Pilate, he says, dude, you have no authority over me. If I wanted to, I could call down legions of angels right now. You only have control over me because I have given and submitted and surrendered control for a purpose that you can't even possibly imagine. Your control over me is an illusion. You don't have it. I've given it away. I've chosen to die for the sins of my people. I will raise my life up again, as he says just now. I sacrifice my life so I may take it back again. No one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily. For I have the authority to lay it down when I want to and also to take it up again. For this is what my Father has commanded. So Jesus has earned your trust by giving his very life for you. How much are you trusting him with your life these days? So it's one thing for someone to say, like, I love you, I care about you, follow me and do everything I say. You're like, how much do I trust this person has my best interest at heart? But when someone says, I want you to follow me, I love you so much, I'm going to give my very life for you. I'm going to sacrifice my life for you, that you might be restored to relationship with God, you might be restored to other people in the flock, You're going to be part of a flock of people, a bunch of other people who need me and need each other and are struggling and fearful and don't know where to get food and nourishment and how to escape the predators. You're going to be part of this flock. We're going to help each other. I'm going to help you. And the way that you're going to know that you can trust me is I'm going to give my very life for you. I love you that much. I'm going to be raised from the dead. I'm going to take my life back so that you might know I have the power to conquer death and sin and every other evil thing. And that one day I'm going to return and restore this world to the beauty it was intended to be. I want you to know you can trust me because I have given all for you. Now, if someone says that, we're more inclined to say, okay, well, if you're willing to die for me and be raised from the dead, then the one day promise to come back, okay, I'll listen to you. You're the kind of person I want to trust. You're not in this for yourself. You're in this for me. You genuinely love me. You're laying down your life for me. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. And he invites us into this relationship with the Father. Says, I have this special relationship with the Father, and I'm going to be drawing you into that special relationship. He loves me. I love him. Together, we're inviting you in. And then a little later in the gospel, we say, I'm going to send my Holy Spirit to dwell within you, that you might know this love that Father, Son, and Spirit have shared for all of eternity. We're inviting you in to the coolest group ever. One God, three persons, mystery, but love and commitment and service that's gone on for eternity. We're inviting you in. And as we see all through John's gospel, Jesus teaches people and then there are different responses. And you have to make a decision. When he said these things, the people were again divided in their opinions about him. Some said, he's demon-possessed, out of his mind. Why listen to a man like that? And others said, this doesn't sound like a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? Last week's sermon, healing a man born blind, sign of the Messiah. I'm the light of the world. I'm the one come to heal the blind, physically blind, spiritually blind, emotionally blind, relationally blind, all the blinds. I've come to bring healing, to bring sight, to bring life, to bring love, to bring joy. He opens our eyes. And it's interesting that people can have the same exact experience of hearing Jesus teach them, and some people say he's crazy, and other people say he's the answer to everything I've been longing for my entire life. And we get to choose what our response is. We get to choose. We get to respond to the invitation. So every time we encounter Jesus in church and the Word and his teaching when he's here on earth, he gives us an RSVP. Respond in the way that you would like to. And some people are like throwing it in the trash, the invitation. And other people say, sign me up. I want to be in the front row. And really, every day is a chance for us to ask the question, how are we responding this day? Like, it's not, did you respond once when you were a teenager at a camp? That's fine. But how are you responding right now, today? Like right now, are you waking up, wanting to go on an adventure with Jesus, listening to him, trusting him? Are you bringing your real self to him? Are you listening for his voice? Are you hearing that he knows you by name? Are you saying, I want to follow you, even if it's scary to you? You have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. One of his disciples, Peter, looked back at the truths of the Old Testament and who Jesus came to be as the Messiah. And he was describing to people who were suffering, that he is writing to all over the ancient Mediterranean, that were the first Jesus followers, that were just now starting to experience persecution and rejection, who were being pushed out, marginalized, struggling. Their external worlds financially and socially were crumbling. And Peter is writing to them to encourage them to stay on the path. Keep following the shepherd. Stay in the sheepfold. Let him watch over you. I know your exterior lives are getting chaotic. I know you're suffering. But I want you to know he loves you. Don't use the signs of the exteriors of your life to cause you to come to the wrong conclusions about Jesus. So he's describing Jesus to them. He never sinned, nor ever deceived anyone. He did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. He left his case in the hands of God, who always judges fairly. He personally carried our sins in his body on the cross so that we can be dead to sin and live for what is right. By his wounds, you are healed. Once you were like sheep who wandered away, but now you have turned to your shepherd and guardian of your souls. So we have an invitation every day to respond. And whether you're online or you're here in person, how are you responding these days? Have you at some point said in your life, Jesus, I want to be forgiven by you. I want you to lead my life. I want to learn to listen to your voice. I want to follow you. Great. But it's not a static thing you just hold on to from the past. The question every day is, am I still wanting to listen to you? Am I still wanting to follow you? Am I still wanting to trust you? So every day is an invitation to keep going on the journey, one day at a time. So I want to give you a chance just to respond to Jesus. Maybe during the sermon there's been one little time when he whispered to you, like, this is for you. Just remember this. And if he has, I want to give you a chance just to respond to that in a fresh way right now. Begin a conversation with him that you can continue later. So I'm going to give you a minute to reflect. I'll have the worship team come back up and the prayer team to come forward. I'm going to give you a minute just to respond to Jesus in the ways that he is speaking in your life. And it can be, an honest prayer can be, man, if I'm honest, I don't really want to follow you because I don't trust that you're leading me to a good place. Or I'll follow you if you make a promise to me that everything in my life is going to be the way I want it to be. That can be an honest prayer. Just start with where you actually are. And maybe it's a coming back to change your mind about things you've started to believe about him and come back and say, I believe again that you're good, that you love me, that you're my shepherd, that you're healing me, that you're guiding me, that you're taking me to a place that's rich and abundant on the inside. But wherever it is that he's making you aware of right now that you are, just take a minute to begin a conversation with him. So Jesus, as a group of sheep, a flock, we bring ourselves individually and collectively to you. We ask for you to increase our awareness that we're loved by you, to increase our trust that you're leading us in a good way, to increase our ability to believe that there's a rich and abundant life that you're growing inside of us. In those ways that our external life does not look to us to be rich and abundant. Help us to come back to you, to acknowledge that your life often looked like it was struggling on the outside, and to believe that there is a life with your Father, that you're growing deep within inside of us by your Spirit. to experience this love, this community of Father, Son, and Spirit growing within us, that we then get to live out in community with other sheep. Thank you for this time to be reminded that you're the gate, that you're the good shepherd. And as we get back to you in worship now, just help us to do this, recognizing our need to live in you, to abide in you. And it's through you, Jesus, that we pray to the Father.